through that, I've learned a lot of things, but the most potent examples I've had of that being connected beyond my physical form or beyond to someone I love or know or hate is in the theatre. And I've probably had 3 or 4 times where I've heard many actors describe it. It's almost a slightly out-of-body experience, but you can stand on stage with 2,000 strangers and feel like you know them intimately and they know you intimately and feel completely safe. That everything, you can open up your heart and they're opening their heart and you're completely connected. It's, in that instant, a feeling of absolute privilege that you can experience it, and so powerful that it raises the hairs on the back of your neck. And you can't, here's the frustrating thing about it, you can't make it happen. You can try your heart out. You can be the most dedicated actor of all time, and you can always do good shows, but of all the shows I've ever done, the years of being on stage, probably only 3 or 4 times have I really felt it. And it's a pure blessing. And at the same time as you're there in it, it's this complete knowledge of unity, of community. If you're really listening, it's the space. It's the space between words. If you listen to great music, it's not always the music, it's sometimes the space. The greatest composers, I think, understood the space between the notes. And when you feel that, it's so uplifting. It's amazing. And we can get so focused on listening really hard and listening to the music that you forget. The experience of God is restful. It's, I feel, rejuvenating. I think modern day life, we often feel quite tired and quite run down. And that may be because we don't always observe to the laws of nature and laws of this body and how we should live our life. But I wrestle with this all the time. Is there a way that you can experience God when everything's crap in your life? Little things. I try and do this every day. I know you probably think I'm weird, but I will, at the end of a shower, always turn on cold as a little reminder that that's not going to affect who I am. The experience of being warm, pleasurable in a hot shower, it's just an idea that that's better than cold. Is it comfortable to have a really cold shower in winter? It's not comfortable, but why can't God exist in that uncomfortability? Why can't you be able to find rest in that? When I go to the gym or work out, you're signing up to have some moments where it's really uncomfortable and painful. And I think even as much as 6 months ago, I used to resent it. I used to, and I can't wait till it's over. But I thought, why am I wasting my life only wanting the pleasurable, only wanting the comfortable? Why work so hard just for that when you know that at best a quarter of your life is going to be pleasurable and comfortable? At best. A lot of life is uncomfortable. A lot of this experience it's not easy. It's not. I don't care who you are. It's not easy waking up first thing in the morning. You don't always want to get up out of bed. But can you find God in that? And I think that's where I'm at right now. I think to find that space. I've sort of got off the track from your question.
No,
but even in the pain or discomfort, or I don't want to do this, there should be some rest. And then, funnily enough, my experience is you can kind of enjoy it. It's weird. You can kind of enjoy the things which most people are not and shy away from. Fear is something that is, I think, the greatest disease of modern times. I mean, stress, people call it stress, but it's just fear. It's just as adults, it seems no one wants to say I'm scared. I'm scared that I'm not going to do well at my job. They go, I'm so stressed, I've got such a busy day, you know. But the fear stops you being able to rest. And lately I've been practicing this whole idea of just resting in the idea that I'm scared. You can't change it. You can't say to your mind, don't be scared. The worst thing, as you know, to a director, if you see someone you're interviewing is nervous, and you say to them, don't be nervous, it's going to do absolutely nothing. It'll probably make it worse. So it's best to kind of admit the human condition we have, and that it's not all roses, but still to be able to find rest in it. And I think that's God. I think God is somewhere in there. We all know the moment we get married and the joy of being married, that something's going to happen to that relationship. Either someone's going to die, it's going to break up, there's going to be pain. Equivalent to the attachment we have to it will be the pain from having that taken apart. And I suppose what I would love to be able to do, and what I'm working on, is being able to rest in the joy of it. And not that I've been through a breakup of marriage, but being able to rest in its destruction as well. Because that's not real, that's not God. None of those things are God. God exists in it somewhere. And the only way to experience it, from my being on stage or anything like that, sex, anything, the only way to really experience it is to find some rest in it. Find the space in it. And then everything enlarges.
What happens when you die, Hugh, do you think?
I've just been reading about it this morning.
Oh, somebody knows? Somebody wrote a book about it?
Yeah, it's called the Bhagavad Gita. And I was just reading it today. And I remember reading this thing, and it tells you what to do at that moment of death. And I remember thinking, oh man, this is like a fairy tale to me, because I've never actually faced a moment of prolonged knowing I was going to die, or thinking I was going to die. I haven't had that moment yet. But I have had a glimpse into what it will be like for me. I was researching this movie, The Fountain. I play a brain surgeon, so I was invited in to see some surgery. This woman, and just before we went in, the doctor told me that the woman was going to die. It was a recurrence of a tumour, and it was the size of he said almost the size of a tennis ball in her brain. He said, we're going to operate on it. And they kept her awake. It was the most extraordinary thing. They kept her awake so that they knew, as they're cutting into the tumour, whether they're cutting into speech parts of the brain or movement. So she was playing a kind of video game, lying down, the entire skull, the top half of the skull is off. And they're cutting in and they're asking her questions. She has to play this video game. But I've gone past the point. As she was wheeled in, I just had the information that she was going to die. And she had blonde hair. My wife has blonde hair. And for about a second, I almost was sick from the fear of thinking, what if that was her? And then I won't lie to you, then almost straight after that came the idea, what if it was me? And I was terrified, absolutely terrified. Because bottom line is, for all the work you might do in your life to prepare for that moment, I realised I was miles off it, miles off being ready. I mean, I think if I could aspire to anything, that great story about Socrates on his death, when he'd taken the poison, and the poison was going through his body, and he's explaining how it's going up his body, and he's starting to go numb in his feet, and his disciples, I suppose, for want of a better word, are crying, and he turned to him and says, why are you crying? I've prepared my whole life for this moment. And he was fine with it. He was absolutely fine. And in fact, quite calmly explaining what was going on in his body, because he wasn't attached to his life in the same way he wasn't attached to death. I think death, you said at the beginning of this interview, you said, I'm going to ask you a very simple question. What is God? And I think death is as simple as that. I think it's another moment. It's another moment that we live through. And my feeling is, whilst our attachment to the sensorial life, which is really our connection to this, it's really our only connection, really, to this creation, is what we perceive through the senses, that goes, that somehow the soul or the God within you kind of carries on. I don't know. Maybe it takes. I've read lots of different things. You go into some kind of waiting area. You take on another body. I mean, I grew up with the whole idea of heaven and hell, and there'll be judgment. And I think there probably is, but I think it's just more simple, cause and effect. Whatever happens beyond death will be due to what's been going on in your mind at that moment of dying.
What about the concept of paradise being your life on earth now? What about the concept of hell
It's here.
being your life on earth now?
I totally... The revelation to me from the film I did, The Fountain, and I'd urge you to speak to Darren Aronofsky because he's an incredibly smart man and incredibly artistic. In the Bible, in Genesis, it talks about Adam and Eve being cast out, and the sword of truth, I think the flaming sword, which represents truth, is there to guard it. Because Adam and Eve eat from the garden of good and evil, they eat the tree of good and evil, and they eat the apple, so they understand duality for the first time. Up until then, there was no concept of good and evil, of the tree of knowledge. There wasn't any understanding of duality. There was only an understanding of unity, of God. So from that moment, all of a sudden, God and man are separate. Man and woman are separate. Oh, I'm naked, you're naked. And I think that's where we are. And I think it may all sound too neat, but I truly believe there is a way to find the Garden of Eden here, in this life, wherever you are. You don't have to go to the top of a mountain to do it. I'm born in Sydney, and I think you can find it in a suburb of Sydney. I think it's totally your interpretation of life, the way you live it. I don't think it's easy, but I've read enough people who are fully self-realized, I suppose, have fully realized God within them and within life, where they are in the Garden of Eden. I think there's been some examples of it in history, and luckily they've written things down. And I think I fully believe that paradise is available. And I say that only because I feel like I've had a few moments of experiencing it. Sometimes in meditation, I've had a few moments on stage, some moments in relationships.
So paradise could be here on earth?
Yeah.
What about hell? What is your definition of hell?
The definition of hell that I was taught when I was younger is absence of God, which I remember thinking at the time when I was younger, I thought, no God, I don't know how bad that would be. I remember thinking, I don't know how you go from absence of that to flames and all of that, fire and brimstone. But I do now. I don't think you can be absent from God, because God is in everything. But I do think that you can get so far away from the laws of nature, that the experience of life is hell. It must be. I haven't done it or been close to doing it, but people take their life. I think they must be in hell, for there to be no other option than to end it, for it to be unbearable to that point. Then I believe that hell must exist. They must feel so absent from any feeling of peace, truth, bliss. Not only that they don't experience it now, but that they never will, that they end their life. There must be hell on earth. That must be the definition of hell. The mistake, I think, is to confuse heaven with